Well, welcome back, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you all for your attention yesterday and for coming back here today. Checking in with several of the adult leaders, it seems that many of you had a positive experience getting that first introduction with your peers across the network, be able to hear some of the reflections and prayer services that your senior leaders and fellow retreatants have put together with great intent. And we have much more of that today. Today is our second longer session. We'll be meeting till about 3 o'clock or so. And our format is pretty similar to yesterday. We have a number of student leader reflections to share with you all today. We'll also have time to meet with our mixed small groups, the same as yesterday, and our small groups within our schools, and have the opportunity to come together and pray before our God. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to today's retreat coordinator, Dr. Poklowski. Thank you, Dr. Poklowski.
Good morning, everybody, and it's wonderful to have all of you here. To echo what Mr. Horgan just said, today's theme is in God's image and according to God's likeness, and each of our themes for the days are taken from the fundamental principles. So something to think about as we move throughout the course of our talks today and our small group conversations is how are each of us made in God's image and according to God's likeness, and how does that bring us to the point that we're at here at this particular retreat? You know, we believe that each and every single one of you has been called here for a reason, perhaps a reason that you don't know yet, and certainly we may not know, but God has called each of you here, and all of you have responded yes to that call. So how does that further help us understand how we are each made in God's image and according to God's likeness? And so we'll begin our session, as we begin all of our sessions, with opening prayer. This opening prayer brought to us by Xaverian Brothers High School in Westwood.
In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, amen. No one is far from you, O God. In XBSS community, we can come together in joy, mindful of the burdens we carry, the disappointments and confusions we have. We come together in gladness, never forgetting God's love. We come together with praise for each other and for who assist us on this journey. No one is far from you, O God, and we call upon you, your power, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
A reading from the fundamental principles of the Brothers of St. Francis Xavier. This was the vision Theodore James Ryken had in view when he founded the congregation, a band of brothers who mutually help, encourage, and edify one another and who work together. You are called then by your founder to enter into a true mutual sharing with your brothers and sisters. This sharing will demand of you an opening and a giving of yourself to them at many levels, and a ready acceptance of each of them in all their sinful and graced humanity.
A reading from the first letter of Paul to the Corinthians. As a body is one, though it has many parts, and all the parts of the body, though many, are one body, so also Christ. For in one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, slaves or free persons, and we were all given to drink of one Spirit. Now the body is not a single part, but many. If a foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it does not for this reason belong any less to the body. Or if an ear should say, because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body, it does not for this reason belong any less to the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole body were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But as it is, God placed the parts, each one of them, in the body as he intended. If they were all one part, where would the body be? But as it is, there are many parts, yet one body. The word of the Lord.
and my burning heart will scarcely take it in. As I behold your beauty with unworthy eyes, the only song my soul can find to sing is glorified, 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 Lord my King is glorified, 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 Lord my King. Burning heart will scarcely take it in. As I behold your beauty with unworthy eyes, the only song my soul can find to sing is glorified, 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 Lord my King is glorified. Sing your glory that cannot be unseen. I am changed and changing still as I look upon you, Lord, and still believe. Now I know I have seen your glory that cannot be unseen. I am changed and changing still as I look upon you, Lord, and still believe.
Lord God, your own Son was delivered into the hands of the wicked, yet he prayed for his persecutors and overcame hatred with his blood on the cross. Relieve the suffering of those present today. Grant us peace of mind and a renewed faith in your protection and care. Protect us all from the violence of others, keep us safe from the weapons of hate and jealousy, and restore us to the tranquility and peace. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. St. Francis Xavier, pray for us. Theodore James Riken, pray for us. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you very much, Xaverian Brothers High School. So as we continue to look at our theme of being in God's image and in God's likeness, one of the questions that is important to think about as we move forward in this retreat experience is that each of our 13 schools are a unique expression of Theodore Riken's vision. We're all Xaverian, and yet we all express that in different ways. So to help us to begin to think about what it means to be Xaverian for each of us, Senior Leader Courtney Sachs from Nazareth Regional High School will share with us her experience of what being Xaverian means to her.
Hi, my name is Courtney, and I attend Nazareth Regional High School in Brooklyn, New York. Coming into this retreat, as a senior leader, we were all given the question of what it means to be Xaverian. This wasn't a very specific question, so it took me some time to really think about what it truly meant. For now, I'm going to give you these questions to think about. What does it mean to be Xaverian? When I was in 7th grade, I went through a tough year. In the beginning, I liked my classes and had a pretty good friend group, but then I met a different group of girls. I wasn't friends with them. I had been told by one of my friends that was also friends with them that they had been talking about me, and I really couldn't understand why, but I left it alone and continued about my days. As the school year started to progress, these girls had physically come to me and started bullying me, in person and even through social media. At first, I didn't really let it bother me, but it all just started getting worse and worse. I ended up losing my best friend in the process because she stopped talking to me and started hanging out with the other group of girls. I felt like I had nobody to talk to and didn't know who to go to about the group of girls that had been bullying me. Between that and personal situations, it had all gotten so much to me, and I felt myself slipping away into a state of mind that wasn't right. I wasn't happy. I was constantly sad and didn't want to do anything. I had no motivation to continue about my days anymore. I felt like my faith was gone because when I needed God the most to help me through this, I didn't think that He was there for me, and this caused me to lose my faith for a very long period of time. I won't go into detail, but let's just say that if it weren't for my very close friend at the time, I wouldn't be here giving this speech to you. When 8th grade came around, things were better. It was now the year to start looking at high schools. What I know for a fact was that I needed to get away from all the people that I had gone to junior high with. Knowing that my mother was a high school teacher, I definitely thought about attending Nazareth very early on my 8th grade year. Towards the end of the school year, I went to Nazareth to do a buddy day, and once I got there, I immediately felt at home. I began to realize that no matter how bad things got or how bad they were, in the right environment with the right people, things can get better. They were my hope, and at that moment, I knew that God had led me in this direction and showed me that this was where I needed to be. I had known the school pretty well, being that I was always there when I was younger, whenever I had days off, but this time just felt different. Being in the building as a student was a different experience. The girl who I was with was really funny and outgoing and made me feel comfortable being around everyone else. After that day, I decided that I wanted to go to Naz for high school. When it started getting closer to the start of the school year, I started to get really nervous. I couldn't help but think back to 7th grade and being bullied because I looked different than the norm. Nazareth has a majority population of people of color and Hispanic background. Me, being the only Caucasian student, was worried that I would be bullied again because I looked different. When I first got there, it was the complete opposite. I remember how shy I was compared to everyone else, since I know some people had done a summer bridge program, so they already knew each other. The first day, as I'm sitting in my desk in second period, 2 girls came up to me and asked me what my name was. I told them Courtney and asked the same thing back. "I'm Erica," said a girl with curly black and red hair, and on the other side of her, "I'm Amber," said the one with caramel skin and hair up to about her shoulders. From that very day, these 2 girls and I have been inseparable, and I couldn't ask for any 2 better friends to share my high school years with. As the years went on, I had created so many new friendships that I wouldn't have imagined creating if it weren't for the Nazareth community. I stepped foot into the building my freshman year, so worried about people judging me, but they didn't. They accepted me and loved me for who I was as a person. They didn't care what I looked like or where I was from. It was what I looked like on the inside that mattered most to them. These people are friends that I know I'm going to have for a lifetime no matter what. I also started to gain back my faith in God. Attending a Catholic school and having Mass throughout the year, while also being a part of XBSS and helping to set up the Masses, influenced me to pray more. Doing this more and more often has strengthened my relationship with God and eventually restored my faith in Him. This defining moment for me that has shaped me into the person I am today has taught me how to treat people. All throughout your life, we are going to meet people who aren't going to be nice to you. People can be so cruel, but it is up to us to make sure we show love and kindness to those who need it. Even when things can become difficult, you will always have someone right beside you. I learned that even in the toughest of times, whether you feel the presence of God or not, He will always remain in spirit. In my case, he was within those around me at Nazareth, and for this reason, I will always be one to make sure God shines through me, for myself and for other people. About 6 months ago, I lost my aunt unexpectedly and was devastated. One of the first people I told was my friend Amber, and once I told her, she talked to me and made sure I was okay. She sat and talked to me about it and other random stuff to help me get my mind off of it. She did this until I felt better. When it came to her wake, some of the staff at Nazareth had come all the way out to where we live in order to be there for me and my family during this strenuous time. There have been numerous occasions when times were difficult for me, and there was always someone in Naz who I knew I could go to in order to vent. Whether they just listened or gave me advice on how to handle the situation, it always made me feel better. So to answer the question of what being Xaverian means to me has become clear. Being Xaverian means welcoming everyone with open arms, making sure that everyone knows that they have a family outside of their immediate one. They have a place filled with a bunch of people who care about them and are willing to be there for them if needed. Us as a community, the Xaverian Brothers sponsored schools are a family and will forever and always be one. This is what being Xaverian means to me. Thank you.
And thank you, Courtney. I think that, for all of us gathered here, if we look at our time at our various schools, one of the things that I think stands out the most are the relationships that we have. And one of the hallmarks of a Xaverian education are these enduring personal relationships. Think about the people that you've connected with at your school that have impacted your life, whether it be a student, your peers, or a faculty member or an administrator. And think about the fact that those are the relationships that are going to continue. One of the other hallmarks of a Xaverian education are the 5 spiritual values, which we've already spoken about, but simplicity, humility, compassion, zeal, and trust. And we'll have an opportunity in a few moments to listen to some of our schools reflect on that particular value and where they've seen it. But I'd ask, as we watch these brief videos about the spiritual values, that you ask yourself, well, where have you seen this in your school? Who are the people who have exhibited this for you? Or perhaps, how have you exhibited it for them? So as we look at these 5 spiritual values, we will start with humility, and Malden Catholic will be sharing their thoughts on that.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Foy, and I am from Malden Catholic in Malden, Massachusetts. Humility is one of the most interesting and versatile values in our life. We are taught from a young age not to brag or boast. And as we grow up, we learn to live and serve others humbly. As defined by the Partners in Mission, humility is the recognition of our total dependence on God. Adopting the selfless attitude of Christ, we accept that each person is a unique expression of God's love, is gifted, and is loved in their sinful and graced humanity. We recognize our brothers and sisters as images of God with whom we journey in faith. During his life on earth, Jesus showed us how to be humble in many different ways. My favorite example is the washing of the disciples' feet. Taking on the work of a servant, Jesus shows the disciples the meaning of service. After finishing his task, Jesus says, "I have given you a model to follow, so that as I have done for you, you should also do." Jesus is teaching us to humble ourselves and serve those around us. At Malden Catholic, the teachers show great humility in their work each day. Many travel 30 or more minutes to and from school, arriving at class with energy and enthusiasm. Teachers develop personal relationships with students. Personally, some teachers I've never even had before have come up to me and started a conversation. They find creative ways to teach and make learning enjoyable, and they work hard to help us learn different content and material. When COVID first hit, teachers immediately adapted to the new online learning model. Now, with the hybrid model, teachers at MC come to school each day, risking their health to teach students. One member of our community displays humility in a way I've never seen before. Brother Tom Puccio is one of the cornerstones of our MC community, as he has taught, led, and served MC for over 30 years. One of his strongest attributes is his ability to lead quietly. He takes time to learn about his students, their interests, and he attends almost every sporting event, he partakes in campus ministry events, and the list goes on. Brother does not lead by commanding students and staff to do something. Instead, he leads by example. When I think of Brother Puccio, I'm reminded of that passage from chapter 13 of John, when Jesus washes the feet of the disciples. Brother leads by example in his everyday life and shows MC students and faculty the meaning of service. His constant presence at school events shows his dedication and love for the community, but he never brags about himself and he always builds others up. I've been very blessed to develop a personal relationship with Brother, and he inspires me to be a better version of myself each day. While there are countless examples, I remember one distinct way that Brother showed his humble leadership. Each year, MC allows students to do a service project in Jamaica for a week, and I had the privilege of going last January. On the day we left for Jamaica, we had to meet at the airport around 6:30 a.m. As I arrived, I saw Brother waiting for us near the door. He had arrived at the airport before our group had gotten there to see us off. Brother had decided to wake up early on a Saturday morning and drive to Boston to say goodbye to our group. This is the humility that Jesus is talking about. As my senior year begins to end, I reflect on how Brother has led. As a headmaster, a principal, a teacher, and a friend, Brother has shown me countless times that being a leader requires humbly serving the needs of others by supporting them and showing compassion. Through daily conversations and a simple smile, Brother Puccio has taught me the meaning of humility and service, which I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Brother has always been a mentor and a leader at MC, and will always be one. He has shown me the meaning of humility, and like Christ, he tells me, I have given you a model to follow, so that as I have done for you, you should also do.
Thank you very much, Ben. And
Hello.
Malden Catholic. Brother Puccio is an excellent example of humility, and I don't know if he's on. Yeah, he's on this call, so he even got a chance to hear that. So I hope, brother, that's some positive affirmation for the impact you've had on the Malden Catholic community for the past 30 years. Up next is a reflection on simplicity from St. Bernard's.
Hi everyone, my name is Olivia Massid and I am the senior leader at St. Bernard's School in Uncasville, Connecticut. First, I want to congratulate all of the juniors and my fellow seniors on being chosen to attend this retreat. I hope you all learn and grow here as much as I know I did last year. I'm here to talk to all of you about the Xaverian spiritual value of simplicity. There are a lot of questions asked about what the meaning of simplicity is within the Xaverian Brothers' values. And while preparing for this, I did a lot of searching into the fundamental documents of the brothers. And one thing that really stood out to me is the way they described it as a way of acting, thinking, and feeling. And I couldn't agree more. Simplicity really starts in the minds and hearts of each one of you. One thing I want you all to realize is that within this last year, every one of you has come to value simplicity, whether you're aware of it or not. This past year has challenged every single one of us, and we've all come to value the smaller things in life. We have realized that the value of spending time with the people we love and care about. We have realized the value of our health, and we have realized that joy can come in the little things. This right here is simplicity. Even if you don't understand the importance of it within your life yet, I promise you one day will. It wasn't until 7th grade when I finally understood it. At the end of my 7th grade year, my grandmother passed away. And within the next 2 years, I lost 2 more uncles and a great uncle. At the time, it felt like it was going to be a never-ending cycle. I wanted to pause time right there and never risk losing another person I cared about again. That is when I really understood the meaning of simplicity. I realized that what I really needed to be happy was 2 things: to be surrounded by those I care about and to have a relationship with God. I didn't need to always be busy or have a million things. I just needed to refocus my energy on those around me and make deeper connections with those that I care about. Doing this has not only made me happier, but it grew my relationship with God. I'm sure a lot of you were disappointed, as I know I was, when we found out that we weren't going to be able to meet in person for the retreat this year. But this right here is where we all need to value simplicity. We don't need to be in a big building and with a big group of people to learn and grow from this retreat. We just need to value each other and use simplicity to form connections, even if it's just over Zoom. One thing that I vividly remember one of the senior leaders saying last year is to go light the world on fire. And while we can't do that together this year, if each one of you become your own simple flame, it will bring light into the darkness. So I implore you, value the simple things, find joy in the little things, and live out simplicity every day in your life. I promise you, every single one of you will be happier because of it. Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Thank you, Olivia and St. Bernard's. I do think that if this pandemic has taught us anything, it is about the significance of the simple things in both the way in which God is present in our lives, but also even looking at this retreat. Based on talking to some of the adults, everyone's already having a really great time. And that it's because we're able to appreciate the opportunity for this at all and where God's presence is in that simplicity. So thank you, Olivia, for those thoughts. We're now moving on to St. X's reflections on compassion.
My name is Jax McDonald. I'm going to talk to you about the Zavarian value of compassion. Compassion, as defined by the Zavarian brothers, is the tenderness of heart which is capable of seeing and hearing the needs of all, near and far. According to the fundamental principles, we serve others to manifest God's care and compassionate love to those who are separated and estranged, not only from their neighbors, but also from their own uniqueness, to those that suffer from want, neglect, and injustice. Here at St. Xavier High School, from the top down, I feel like every person excels in compassion. It even shows up in the little things. A student drops his books, and every St. X man around him gets down and helps. On a larger scale, 40% of our students receive financial aid or a need-based scholarship. This shows the compassion our administration has with students, giving kids the opportunity to gain the Zavarian education. My experience with the compassion that St. X gives happened before I was ever enrolled as a student. In February 2016, my father was hospitalized for a hemorrhaged brain tumor and later found out that he had stage 4 melanoma cancer. Now, my dad is a 1993 graduate of St. X and has worked at the school since 1999. As a result, I've been part of the St. X community since I was born. After my dad received his diagnosis, my family experienced the value of compassion firsthand. Teachers, students, parents, and more mobilized to help our family through this tough time. Parents made food for my sisters and I so that my mom could focus on staying with my dad in the hospital. Students signed cards and banners wishing my dad well. Alumni and their sons came to our house and did yard work, allowing for my family to focus on my dad's health. Throughout the experience, one individual who exhibited and embodied compassion was our school nurse, Ann Corey Malloy. She served as a personal medical resource for my mom throughout my dad's journey. Like many others, she also would order dinner for us or provide gift cards to local restaurants. Nurse Malloy is one of my favorite people at St. X. As a school nurse, she is always looking out for the health of students. However, her role far exceeds that. Nurse Malloy finds those students most in need and helps them in any way she can. When a student is not eating lunch or doesn't have the required materials to complete a project, she is quick to notice and take action. One time, I even saw her taking measurements to get a student a new shirt. Mrs. Malloy fills the simple needs students have that often go unnoticed. There's nothing more Xaverian than that. She's also very positive and encouraging. All these examples of compassion show me what it truly means to be Xaverian. Although I was destined at birth to go to St. X, my experiences made me want to go to St. X and become part of this Xaverian community.
Thank you so much, Jackson and St. X, for your reflection on compassion, particularly in the way in which your family received that from St. X, but also in the particular way that Nurse Malloy shares that particular gift with the community. Lowell Catholic has our next reflection on zeal.
Hi, welcome to Lowell Catholic.
Hi everybody, my name is Julia Smith and I'm here to talk about the Xaverian value of zeal and how I see that value lived out at my school, Lowell Catholic. In order to show what zeal means to the Lowell Catholic community, I asked my friends to send me pictures and videos of what zeal means to them in the context of our community. Zeal is defined as the joyful and enthusiastic commitment to the mission of the Catholic Church which God has entrusted to us. We imitate St. Francis Xavier as we give ourselves wholeheartedly to the work of evangelization in word and deed. Zeal is the value that unites each of our Xaverian schools through our common goal of spreading the light of Christ to the people and the communities around us. The fundamental principles of the Xaverian Brothers further state that through zeal and in imitation of Theodore James Ryken, we are emboldened and empowered to face trials and obstacles in our path, knowing that nothing special is achieved without much labor, effort, and zeal. At Lowell Catholic, we have many programs such as our March Madness canned food drive, Faith and Film Nights, and Get Real campus ministry events that encourage us to bring our gifts and talents to other people around us and in our communities. By sharing God's love with others, we as Lowell Catholic Crusaders find zeal within ourselves as we get excited to be examples of St. Francis Xavier's mission to spread the love of God to people everywhere. During our annual March Madness can drive, we compete against other homerooms in brackets to see who can bring in the most canned goods as a fun way to bring in donations for our local food bank. Not to brag, but my homeroom is the reigning champion. We watch fun movies for our Faith and Film Nights and discuss faith-based themes we see in the media today. Finally, our Get Real Nights invite our classmates to hear talks from our XBSS students and discuss how we can live out the Xaverian values in our community through their example. Zeal also means spreading the mission of the Catholic Church through expressions of joy. One of the ways that we do this at Lowell Catholic is through our Mr. LCHS pageant, as you can see through several clips I've included in this video. Every year, juniors and seniors can showcase their talents and enthusiasm for Lowell Catholic by competing in the pageant through the group dance, individual talent, and formal wear sections of the event. These talented performers show zeal through competing to represent the spirit of Lowell Catholic and our mission to be a light of Christ to those around us. One person who is an amazing example of zeal in our community, rightfully so, received the prestigious Zeal Award this year. Bobby is one of the senior XBSS leaders at my school and is the true embodiment of zeal. He is always around at school helping others, whether that be through giving talks, doing afternoon announcements and prayer, performing his duties as captain of the football team, or attending campus ministry events. Bobby is great at getting everyone excited to be a part of the Lowell Catholic community by being active in volunteer opportunities as well. Anyone who has the privilege of meeting him can tell you how zealous Bobby is, and you can tell that he loves being a part of the Xaverian Brothers sponsored school community. Each of our Xaverian Brothers sponsored schools is called to live out the value of zeal through our devotion to Christ and our passion of sharing the good news of Christ with others. Zeal is not a value that we can keep to ourselves. Each of us is called to be an example of the Church's mission of loving as Christ loved and spreading the good news of salvation to others. This amazing truth is something to be recognized and shared with those around us. Here at Lowell Catholic, and by extension the XBSS community, it is so important to us to build a community that empowers and excites in order to reflect the joy that comes from the presence of Christ within all of us, and that is what the value of zeal is at its core.
And thank you very much, Julia, and the Lowell Catholic community, giving us that extensive look not only into your own reflection, but also in the many ways in which Lowell Catholic demonstrates zeal. Finally, as we reflect on the spiritual value of trust, Xaverian Brothers High School has their reflection.
Trust definitely can be a difficult value to live out in your everyday life because it depends more on others than it does yourself. During my freshman and sophomore year, I did a lot of theater, and one of the biggest things is trusting others, because if you don't have complete trust in others, then you can't really put a show on. Through every line and every song, if the cue doesn't happen right, or if someone forgets what they're supposed to be saying, it all just ends badly. This trust can be hard to develop because it's such a complicated thing, because there's so many factors going into it with other people being involved. But we really have to make sure that out of all of the values, to develop trust the most. Thank you.
One time that I trusted in God was when it came to the time for my brother and I to start looking at high schools. We had looked at several different all-boys Catholic high schools in the Boston area, and each one offered a different experience, different people, and we just had a hard time choosing. One night I decided to pray to God to help us decide, which one would be the best fit for us. I knew that, if I put my faith, my trust in God, He would handle everything. And I woke up the next morning on the drive to my middle school, realizing that Xaverian was the place where I wanted to be.
A while ago, one of the kids from our church posted a question on his Instagram, and it was for a school project, and he was asking, what does it mean to be a friend? And I had never really thought about this question that much, but after some thinking, I came to the conclusion that a friend is someone that you enjoy spending time with and someone that you trust. So I sent him his response, and probably 30 minutes later, he posted all the responses, and of the 30-ish kids that responded, all of them had the word trust in their definition of a friend. So clearly, we all understand that to have a relationship with someone, it needs to be built on trust. And that's why I think that trust is such an important value that we live by. Personally, in my life, trusting has always been hard for me to do. I'm not a very trusting person, and I tend to keep my personal thoughts and feelings to myself. And this is especially true before I came to Xaverian. We have a campus ministry program called Spirit Hawk, and it's really similar to XBSS. We have small groups, group leaders that give talks, and a topic every week. And I started going to Spirit Hawk in 7th grade, and I was usually a pretty quiet kid in a small group. I didn't think I had anything really of substance to share with the group. I was really baffled by all the experiences that everyone had had in life with their relationships with their parents, their friends, God, with death. And I didn't think I had those experiences in my life. But I kept going on with Spirit Hawk, and over the years, I found that I just hadn't thought about or talked about my life enough to recognize that I actually had those experiences in my life. And as time went on, I started to talk in small group more, and I was eventually asked to be a leader. And one week I had to give a talk about loss and death. And I honestly had no idea what I was going to talk about once I was assigned the talk. I had never lost someone really close to me, so I didn't really know who I was going to talk about. But I did some thinking, and both of my grandfathers came to mind. And I had never got the chance to meet them because they died long before I was born. And I had never really thought of it as a death in my life because I had never been close to them. But as I was writing my talk, I started to realize that it was a death in my life. It was kind of a hole in my family that I hadn't really recognized. But as I thought about writing the talk, I wouldn't have recognized that this hole in my life had had such a big impact on my life if I hadn't written this talk, and if I hadn't participated in Spirit Hawk, and if I hadn't trusted the people at our school. I know exactly how hard it can be to trust people, but in your small groups, whether you're in a mixed small group or in your school small group, put the trust in the other people in your group. Having trust puts meaning in your small groups, and that's how you build a relationship with people. Because you're on this retreat for a reason. There are lots of people that believe each and every one of you embodied all of the Xaverian values, trust included. So you're all in the company of people that can be trusted, and the question is going to be if you put enough trust in yourself to grow from this experience and build those relationships, because as it says in the fundamental principles, and as I believe strongly, trust builds harmony, and in harmony small things grow. You sure?
And thank you, Xaverian Brothers High School, for your reflection on trust. In a few moments, we'll have the opportunity to head to small group, but first we'll do, as we did yesterday, a break just to give you a chance to get up, stretch your legs, again, drink of water if you need. Right now, the time is 12:43. Please report back at 12:50, and Mr. Horgan will have us set up in small groups by that time. Until then, we'll see you in small group. As you continue to take a look at these questions for your small group reflection. All right, well, it looks like we've got everyone back from small group. So welcome back. I hope that you all had a great opportunity to talk a little bit about your Xaverian experience and the spiritual values and get to know your small group a little bit better. We're going to shift gears slightly, keeping in mind and using the theme of the spiritual values, and talk a little bit about Theodore Ryken and the big picture about how we get to where we are and to this retreat even, and what this means for you in terms of the bigger history, the bigger context of everything. And as you can see on the screen that's shared, I'm joined by a number of guests, all of which were XBSS retreat participants. You already know Mr. Abdo, but I'll give him an opportunity to reintroduce himself a bit. Mr. Abdo.
Thank you, Dr. Poklowski. Yeah, so most of you know that, I graduated from Mount St. Joseph High School in '07. I got to teach there. I had the blessing and opportunity to also be up at St. John's High School with Mr. Foley, who will be introducing himself shortly. And now I'm at Good Counsel. But I did have the opportunity to be a junior retreatant and a senior leader with Mr. Foley. And Mr. Driscoll was one of our senior leaders at the time that Mr. Foley and I were junior participants. And then I also had the opportunity when I came back to St. Joe to be a faculty leader. So I'm very excited to be back with the team again. So.
Awesome. I can go next if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Driscoll.
I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. I'm clicking through all of the videos right here, and I wish this is how my class looked with all the screens on. I think it's awesome to see all your faces. I'm trying to go through and memorize everybody's name as fast as I can as I go through this. But for those of you guys that are present, thank you so much for having myself here present. My name is Mr. Driscoll. I'm the middle school campus minister at St. John's Prep, and I've been part of the Xaverian network for a long time now. I graduated Malden Catholic back in 2006, and then I was fortunate to work there for 8 years as a campus minister, theology teacher, and coach. And then I transitioned to St. John's Prep a couple of years ago. And now I have the opportunity to also be a Xaverian associate, which I've been working on the last couple of years. And if you don't know what an associate is, it's someone who connects with the network and other associates to continue the mission, talk about the mission, connect with the Xaverian brothers. And really, that's a really joyous time in my day and part of my mission, because the Xaverian brothers mean a lot to me. In fact, on the table, I have a card of Brother Henry Marino. He was my campus minister, and he passed away a couple of years ago, but I always keep him in memory, especially when I'm doing talks about the Xaverian brothers and the network, because they've had such an influence on my life and the impact that they've had, and not only just working at the schools and graduating, but this retreat specifically, being a part of the XBSS retreat. I went as a junior, I went as a senior, and then I've been working as an adult leader for years and a guest speaker as well. So I will continue to introduce myself and talk a little bit about the mission when we get into the meat and potatoes of the talk, but it's nice to see all of you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Driscoll. Mr. Foley?
Yeah. How's everybody going? How's everybody doing? Excuse me. Yeah. So I'm Mr. Foley from St. John's High School in Shrewsbury. So shout out to my boys who are there. I know a lot of them are there and they're great guys. So I'm glad to have you guys on board. So yeah, I mean, my story's kind of been told a little bit, I guess. So graduated St. John's in 2007. I was a junior retreatant on the XBSS retreat and then a senior leader with Mr. Abdo. And actually as a junior, as Mr. Abdo pointed out, Mr. Driscoll was actually my senior leader. We both actually ended up going to Assumption College together too. So we've known each other for a long time. And Mr. Peklowski, Dr. Peklowski, excuse me, Dr. Peklowski was also a part of those retreats as well. And now I've worked back at St. John's ever since college. So been back there for 10 years, which is unbelievable. I started as a campus minister for 4 years and have been a history teacher and a football coach for the last 6. And I'm so happy that we get to be a part of today again. This retreat was a pretty defining moment, not just in my high school experience, but I would even say in my life, based on the friendships that I've continued to have as a result of it. So I'm excited to talk to you guys more, but I'm excited to be here.
And finally, Mr. D'Souza.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nick D'Souza. I'm on the Catholic class of 2014, former student of Mr. Mike Driscoll, Mrs. Driscoll. I was a Zavarian Brothers Sponsored School Retreat alumni 2013, and I still will tell anybody when it comes up, whether it's, my brother went on the retreat himself, still one of the best things I've ever done in my life and one of the coolest experiences I've had. And I think it was really something that shaped me going forward that I'll kind of dive into it in a little bit. So, but thank you for having me, and we're looking forward to this.
Great. So hopefully everyone here, you had a chance to kind of get to know the speakers a little bit. The way that we have this presentation laid out is built around the spiritual values. And so each of our speakers, including myself, will sort of take one of those spiritual value themes and sort of build out the bigger context about where we fall as a Zavarian Brothers sponsored school. And so we will begin with the spiritual value of humility and Mr. Driscoll.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Humility, this particular value, I don't know if there's a greater example of humility than the Zavarian Brothers and what they've accomplished over the course of the years that they've been building their mission. When you look at the entire network, and I'm sure you've had an opportunity to talk to a lot of different members of each schools, boys and girls that are very similar to your mission, and how amazing the network is and how far it expands. And from the beginning and the origin of the story all the way to what it is now and how much it's grown, it's just truly amazing. And how much has been able to be accomplished through students similar to yourself, faculty, staff members, through all the networks, not only in the United States, but across the world. And the mission really goes globally. And that simple fact that how much has been highlighted and how much has been celebrated over the years. And then with the Zavarian Brothers, accepting it humbly is the perfect example of how we do this in our daily lives, right? And I think that we're able to look at it and say, with the Zavarian Brothers leading the way, how in return can we be humble? And I think that with not just humility, but with all the values, we have the ability to make sure we live these in our daily lives. And the way that I like to connect all of these as a theology teacher is through scripture. And I'm actually going to do things a little bit differently today than I have in the past, because even though with a different format, there's pros and cons to everything that we do. Usually if we gather in a big room, I don't go back and forth with technology, but since we're doing this on the computer, I really want to utilize a video to show you the scripture passages in a way that engages you a little bit more. And I'm going to give you an opportunity just to think about some questions as I go, and hopefully you can reflect on it and then internalize it, and then you'll be able to speak about it again in a small group and try to break it down to a greater scheme. And the first question is why was I called? I was able to meet with some of the St. John's Prep seniors last night, the juniors and the senior leader, and we were able to talk about how grateful we were for them to join. And I'm extending that thankfulness and gratitude towards everyone here. But all the questions that probably go back to you is, why was I chosen? Why was I picked? What is the purpose of me being there on a Friday night or a Saturday afternoon? And I assure you that that calling is something special. And that calling relates all the way back to the scripture passages of when Jesus calls his first apostles and his first followers. So the video I want to show you now, these videos aren't directly connected to the Bible passages. Of course, they are changed and altered a little bit according to Hollywood, but the message is still the same. So the one that I'm showing you, think about why you were chosen, why you were called, just like why would Jesus call his apostles?
You need help. I'm not looking for any help. And besides, nothing to help with. Hey! You can't just climb into my boat. Yeah, you're right. Give me a helping hand. What do you think you're doing? We're going fishing. There are no fish out there this time of day. In fact, there are no fish out here any time of day. Peter, just give me an hour, and I will give you a whole new life. Who says I want one? I'm telling you, there's no fish out there. Fish. How did this happen? What did you do? I'm giving you the chance to change your life.
Peter, come with me. Give up catching fish, and I will make you a fisher of men.
What are we going to do?
Change the world.
Boom, then you get all excited, dramatic music in the mix. Everybody gets all amped up and ready to go change the world. And I don't say this lightly. That message is for all of us here today. And for all of you, especially that were called on this retreat. You were called to change the world. And I don't say that lightly at all. Anytime that I go into a retreat, whether it's the XBSS, freshman, even my 6th grade retreat, I always tell everyone that's there listening, take something away from that retreat, and I guarantee you when you build off of it, that becomes contagious to your classmates. And then before you know it, you're changing the world. And something amazing about that particular video and passage of Jesus calling his first apostles is that he's a complete stranger. I'm scrolling through all the different faces and I'm looking at each and every one of you. And this is the first time you've ever met me. This is the first time you met many of us before, whether you're an adult leader or a group leader, a senior leader or a junior. These are all new environments, and that's the intention, is that we're trying to expand that network again. And Jesus has called you, Christ has called you. And I hope that you take that to sincerity of your heart, because when you were called to change the world. And when Jesus calls us as invitation, and even though we might not recognize it at first, and when he's trying to get into your boat, and maybe you think it's a little absurd that a stranger is getting on your boat, you give him a helping hand, and then you fish. And then before you know it, you have more fish than you need, right? And then we can go to all the men and women across the world and expand that mission. And it's so powerful. And I hope that you realize it, that this network has that power. In fact, this is the foundation of it from all the schools. Without Christ, there would be no XBSS network. Without the Severian brothers' mission and determination, there wouldn't be anybody here gathering. So it's powerful. And I hope that you notice that and recognize that. The other video that I usually like to share, or the passage, is actually the burning bush with Moses. For time's sake, I'm not going to show it to you, but I just want to briefly talk about it. The idea of miracles and the idea of God calling us again. And for right now, I teach 6th graders. And I actually just went over the story of the burning bush with Moses. It's a new semester, so we're in the beginning of the Bible. Don't think I'm going too slow for them. But we just started it. And when I read this story every single time I get a question, why don't we get burning bushes? Why don't we see them? But in fact, we do each and every day. This right here is a burning bush. This right here is God speaking to us. And the way that I want to conclude in the idea of humility and the idea of calling, whether it's God through the burning bush to Moses, or whether it's Jesus calling his apostles, is that we have acts of humility each and every day at our schools. And yesterday, St. John's Prep had a beautiful act of humility. For those of you who know Pete Frates, he passed away last year. And Pete Frates is an alum of St. John's who kind of kickstarted the Ice Biker Challenge and did a fundraiser for ALS. And I'm sure you've seen it go viral at some point. But yesterday, we concluded our fundraiser, and all of our students were invited to ask number 3 pins, because that was his number at St. John's, or you wore a Pete Frates t-shirt. And now, a year removed from his passing, his legacy still continues. And what I thought was really cool and really humbling was that when I taught last period, a 6th grader who wasn't at St. John's last year, who was not part of his honor guard at his funeral, who was not part of the story when he was there and all of his foundations and his fundraisers, I looked at my class and they were all wearing his t-shirt. And I thought to myself, how cool that is. Students who have never seen him or heard him talk or his family talk, they're representing Frates. And that's a calling. That's the burning bush right there in front of us. And I know that I can go through a million examples of all your schools that you conduct the same type of activity, or maybe it's your calling to do that. And then you're the one that's the voice. And before you know it, it's contagious, and then you're changing the world. So with that, think about those questions I asked you, not just in this particular large group, but when you go back to your small groups. And again, I'll have a chance to say thank you at the end, but thank you so much to listening to the words and to listening and watching the scripture passages. And I want to just switch it over back to Dr. Poklowski, and he's going to lead you to the next direction.
Thank you, Mr. Driscoll. And so as we continue to move down in history and take a look at Jesus's and Moses's impact on the world around us, we begin to look at the spiritual value of zeal, and Mr. Abda will talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Dr. Poklowski. Yeah, that verse that that Mr. Driscoll had, that Bible verse that Mr. Driscoll had on the PowerPoint presentation, is something that is near and dear to my own heart, and it's the reason why I think I have any amount of single-minded devotion or ardent enthusiasm or passion for this network, for these schools, for the Xaverian Brothers, and for what St. Francis Xavier stood for, right? To whom much is given, much is required. I've been blessed with a lot. I've been blessed to the point where I have been given the opportunity to not only teach at my alma mater, but to be a part of the St. John's community, to be a pioneer, and to now be a Falcon, be part of the Good Counsel community. And when we think of zeal, right, we think of school spirit, and that's just the easy way of looking at that value, and it has a lot of truth and merit to it. I've got to experience my own zealous behavior and zeal for Mount St. Joe back when we were in Memorial Gym, and most of my Gales in this room have only experienced Memorial Gym as a relic more so than the Smith Center, right? But we had that thing rocking, like the bleachers, to the point where they were going to break down during basketball games. And then I got to St. John's and I got to experience the dojo, and I got to experience a zeal and school spirit that I thought couldn't have been more elevated. Mr. Foley was a sensei at one point back in his senior year, and watching these young men kind of get fired up. I mean, they were featured on ESPN for their school spirit. That's a pretty big deal, right? And then I look at, and I only have gotten to experience it a little bit at Good Counsel, but it's tried and true within the Falcon nest that the school spirit. I've gotten 6 months of it at basketball games, especially at football games. The way that these young men and women have such incredible pride for their own schools. Zeal is exactly as Julia put it in her presentation. Lowell Catholic, all these schools are examples of this, but that doesn't come from out of nowhere. And to get to the history of Riken, we have to go back even further in thinking about why we are Xaverian. And that comes from St. Francis Xavier. Francis Xavier, for those of you that don't know, was only a degree, we're the Xaverian Brothers in general, only a degree of separation from the Jesuits. He was best friends with Ignatius Loyola. He was one of the founders of the Jesuits, one of the co-founders of the Jesuits. And they created this band of brothers, which you guys have heard of, and that band of brothers has now been expanded to bands of brothers and sisters, and within our own network, and I think within our global community. And a big reason why Riken picked Francis Xavier was because of his single-minded devotion to his work. Francis Xavier was a missionary. He got that missionary spirit from his fellow brother Ignatius. And that took him to parts of the world, to parts of this, to parts that he knew didn't exist. He traveled from India to Southeast Asia to mainland China. He didn't even make it to the mainland because he died prior to even making it to his final destination of his missionary work. He believed in his faith, in the gospel message, in his work so blindly that it took him to the point of losing his life for it. And I think about this in the schools that I've been at, and the single-minded devotion and ardent enthusiasm all of you have for your own individual schools. And for the first time, many of you are now experiencing a world beyond your own network, your own community, right? So many of the students that I have spoken with outside of this retreat, when it's finished, had no idea that 12 other schools existed outside of their own network. And the fire begins to burn within them during retreat and post-retreat to be able to spread this gospel message to others. That's what Francis Xavier did. He didn't have much to his name when he left. He was born into affluence, but he left that all behind to be able to carry out this mission. And if we think about the missions that we have within our own schools, it takes more than just school spirit to be able to proclaim the gospel message. What you all are doing is not, it's abnormal, right? This experience is abnormal. It's countercultural. It shouldn't be, but it is. And that requires a lot of single-minded devotion to your own schools, your own school communities, and to this network in general. What brought me changing the world, right? Like when Mr. Driscoll showed that video, it called to mind, changing the world requires zeal, right? You can't just change the world by just saying it and then hopefully it happens, right? It requires that single-minded devotion. And that's what you all are experiencing today. We're giving you the tools and the resources to be able to do this each day that this expanded retreat takes place, and to bring those back to your school communities. Zeal does not, this value of zeal loses its entire luster if you step away from this retreat, learn nothing from it, and or learn a lot from it and do nothing about it, right? I say this on different retreat experiences, whether it's junior retreat, senior retreat, but especially on XBSS retreat, you all have been given so much, and so much is now required of you to bring that to your respective communities and beyond. Just to kind of close, I think back to why Riken picked Francis to be the patron saint of the congregation. It's because of that devotion. It's because of his unwavering ability to keep at his mission, this missionary work. We're called to expand this beyond our own school communities. That's what we're calling all of you to do. This talk started with with the former president of Mount St. Joseph High School, Brother James Kelly. And I think back to his zealous behavior and the way that he approached this history. Sometimes it was a bit more longer than it needed to be, but it was unbelievable the way that he was able to curtail all the information from Francis Xavier all the way through Riken up to the current moment in time. And so I thank you guys for all of you being a part of this retreat, bringing that zeal back to your communities, and make sure you stick to that single-minded devotion to bringing this mission to the rest of the world. Dr. Peklowski.
Thank you, Mr. Abdo. As we continue to look forward, we asked Mr. Foley to join us, not only because he's a history teacher, but because he can take such a boring topic and make it entertaining. So as we look at the idea of simplicity and of Riken's vision, and how it fits into certainly why we're all together, but into the bigger picture of what it means to be Xaverian. Mr. Foley.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Peklowski. Just before I start, I just first want to say that I think I'm a terrible teacher when it comes to being on Zoom. So if this is not great, forgive me, because again, I kind of feed off of audience, reactions and some smiles and stuff. So all I can see right now is Dr. Peklowski, Mr. Abdo, and Mr. Driscoll. So I'm going to need a little something from you guys because I can't see anybody else on the screen. So hopefully this goes okay. But as Dr. Peklowski mentioned, I'm going to be talking about simplicity. And I think it's always that word. I mean, zeal, I always have to look up because I never really know exactly what that means. And simplicity, I think I thought I knew what it meant, but I think as I've kind of continued and grown in my understanding of what Theodore James Riken was, and the founding of this school and this network, it's kind of taken on a different meaning. And so usually when I start talks, and usually when I don't know what I'm going to be talking about, I go to where we all go, and that's Google. And so I Googled some great quotes about simplicity just to get a little bit of a reference as to how I wanted to kind of progress forward, right? And there were kind of two quotes that kind of stuck out to me. One, Hans Hofmann, who apparently is a German-born American abstract painter. Obviously, I had no idea who that guy was before I looked it up, but he said, "The ability to simplify means to eliminate the unnecessary so that the necessary may speak." And the other one came from Steve Jobs, which I know a little bit more about him, but he said, "Simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean, to make it simple. But it's worth it in the end, because once you get there, you can move mountains." And just like Mr. Driscoll and Mr. Abdo were talking about before, is that's exactly what Riken did. He did make things simple to understand, so that people can, like us, move mountains. And the way he described it, and the way the Zavarian brothers describe it, as far as I know, is that they call it the common, unspectacular flow of everyday life. Which again, when I was a student and I heard that, I was like, what the heck does that mean? I have no idea what these people are talking about. But then when I really dove into the history of Theodore James Riken, I understood that he made his goal in life simple. And by making his goal in life simple, it drove forward any and all decisions. And I think that's probably what we can learn most from him. Now, to keep it even more simple for us, if you remember nothing else from my talk, just remember the word perseverance, because I think that describes Theodore James Riken's life better than anything. So if you guys don't know much about Theodore James Riken, so he's born basically as an orphan. His father dies when he's very young, and his mother is too poor to really take care of him. So as a result of that, he's cared for by his priest uncle. And he kind of grows up and is kind of a typical teenager, making bad decisions, maybe doing some things with his friends, so on and so forth. But at one point, he has this experience where he was, quote unquote, put in his place. And oh man, if I, it'd be a long time. I had to talk for a lot longer than a few minutes if I was going to talk about all the times I've been put in place in my life. But and what he said was that when he was put in his place, he turned to God, fell in love with God, and placed himself in God's service. And that was his life now. So he made his life simple. Sure, the other things that he's going to have to try to do and accomplish, incredibly complicated. But if you have a single-minded devotion to and a very specific goal that you're trying to achieve, it becomes simple. Maybe not simple how to achieve that goal, but simple into what your life is supposed to become. And this is exactly what he does, because again, we kind of like to hear the story. Yeah, he came to the United States, you know, everything went well. We have schools, we're all awesome, right? Not exactly how it went down. He actually came to the United States first in the early 1800s, and he was a dock worker in New York City. He served the bishop for some time, but really didn't find much success. Eventually, he'll head back to Belgium, which is where he's from, and he tries to start what will eventually become the Zavarian brothers. With two other men. And at one point, they're struggling so much for finances that he actually leaves the other two guys, and he goes out and he tries to collect money. And when he comes home and back to these two men, both of them had quit. Now, again, in most situations, a lot of us, when we're faced with some kind of challenges, and this is not me, I succumb to this as much as any other person. When we face with challenges, someone's like, you know what, never mind. Like, this is too much. I'm not even going to want to continue to pursue this. But again, the simplicity of Riken's life was that he wanted to create this congregation so that he can dedicate his life to God. And so he knew that even when he was faced with difficulties and challenges, he was going to continue. So after about 3 years of struggle, bad finances, some pretty bad candidates, even some famines and diseases and persecutions and everything else they had to face, on June 15th, 1839, the Zavarian brothers were formed in a very small red building in Bruges, Belgium. And obviously they are then going to become the Brothers of St. Francis Xavier. Now, where we start coming into the mix, and again, very long time ago, was about 1854. And that was his second trip to America. This is the whole watermelon story, which I'm sure many of you guys have heard before. They come off their first meal as a watermelon. It is even described as a charitable old lady, discerning perhaps their hunger from their appearance, gave them a watermelon. So again, not this glamorous, amazing start to the founding of our schools in this country. So they progress, they're trying to get some kind of headway. They start some small schools in a few different cities and a few different areas. But eventually the Zavarian brothers actually hit a pretty rough patch when it came to finances. And 4 of the 6 people actually called back to Belgium, including Riken. And they decided to only leave 2 back in America in 1860. One of them is brother Francis Xavier Dondorf, and the other is brother Stephen Somers. Now, when I talk about simplicity and being simple, these guys were certainly simple. And I don't mean it like they didn't have an iPhone kind of thing. Like, I mean, they were kind of simple. They were not really the guys and the girls who would have been selected to go on the XBSS retreat. Let's just put it that way. They were kind of the expendables. Yeah, you know, hopefully, hey, good luck, guys. Like, hopefully it works out for you. But there's no guarantee that they were going to do anything special in the United States. But again, because of what Riken gave to them, and that dedication and that simple minded devotion to serving God, they also realized that they could never give up. And as a result of that, after again, another about 4 years of discernment and 4 years of effort, eventually they get the support from Martin John Spalding, who was the Bishop of Louisville, Kentucky, and they're able to establish St. Xavier High School in 1864, a full 10 years after arriving in 1854 and eating that watermelon. And eventually, as we kind of continued along and our schools developed and they made it to Massachusetts and Maryland and New York and Connecticut and all those different places, eventually we established this retreat. And in 1995, the first XBSS retreat was held. And kind of the purpose of the retreat is obviously for, number one, for you guys to know that there is an XBSS network, because a lot of kids have no idea that there are other schools that are even Zavarian in our own states, let alone in the entire nation. And it's also that now you guys are charged, just like Francis Xavier Dondorf and brother Stephen Somers, to continue Riken's legacy. And so what we ask you to do, and what we did as retreatants ourselves, is that I want you to identify something from this retreat that you're going to give back to your school. And as you guys can see up on the screen, that Dr. Poklowski has presented, is the gift you have received, give as a gift. And what I'm going to ask you guys to do, and girls, sorry to always say guys, I do teach in an all boys school, so forgive me. So guys and girls, what I'm going to ask you to do is don't overcomplicate this, right? Don't overcomplicate what you're going to take away, because there are so many things that you could come back to school with, but find something that you learned here, make it very simple and obtainable and tangible, and then bring that back to your school. So the gift that you receive from us is something simple, but the thing that you're going to give back to your school is going to be something extraordinary. And that's what Mr. Driscoll and Mr. Abdo are talking about when it came to changing the world and moving mountains. And just as a side note, because why I like history is that I feel like we can really learn life lessons from history, is that that's also true for your life. Don't overcomplicate things, right? Because if you keep things simple and keep the most important thing, you guys will all live, and girls, you guys will all live fulfilled, happy, and wonderful lives. And I really appreciate you guys giving me the time and opportunity to speak with you. So keep it simple and head back to your schools and give the gift you received here as a gift to all of your communities. Back to you, Dr. P.
Thank you, Mr. Foley. This picture that's on the screen is something that was formerly in the chapel at Zavarian Brothers High School. Most of the current students wouldn't recognize it because we've remodeled since. But it's a mosaic of Mary. And when we look at the spiritual value of compassion, I use compassion to look at the XBSS network and all of the people that have helped build these schools throughout time, but also looking at, as Mr. Foley highlighted, the fact that the recognition that we are a network of schools and the importance of collaboration is a relatively historically new in the history of the Zavarian Brothers. The first national XBSS retreat happened 25 years ago. So you guys are now a part of a 25-year, this is the 25th, a 25-year legacy of an experience that's very unique. And it was because the brothers began to recognize that with vocations declining, how do we carry on what it means to be Zavarian? You know, what Courtney talked about at the beginning of our time together, and how you probably shared the same conversations in small group. What does it mean to be Zavarian? To talk about these spiritual values, to talk about these enduring relationships. And the cool thing about a mosaic, if you've never seen one, is this picture is made of all of these little itty bitty tiles. And each of those tiles, if you zoom in on it really close, you don't get a picture. If you're too close to a mosaic, you don't see the big picture. But think about yourselves and all the students in your schools and all of the alums and the faculty and the students who've participated in this retreat. You're all a different piece of this puzzle. The opening prayer used the passage about us being one body in Christ, but that we all have different roles. Well, to appreciate those different roles, those different gifts and talents that I know all of you have, because you wouldn't be on this retreat if your leadership and your different gifts and talents weren't already recognized. We only can understand and appreciate others' gifts and talents without any sort of jealousy when it's viewed through the lens of compassion. And so, I already said in my introduction and talking about who it is, how I've been impacted by this retreat and who I am. A good part of it has to do with the people that I've met here. My junior year, I met a St. John's Prep student, and back 25 years ago, or 24 years ago, because that was the second retreat, St. John's Prep and Xaverian did not play nice together, and we still don't really play nice together on the football field. But back then, in sports in general, but back then it was a visceral kind of hatred. Like a group of my friends almost refused to talk to me ever again because I was hanging out with people from St. John's Prep. It was kind of like a West Side Story kind of bizarre thing. And so that's changed. And part of that's changed because for the past 24 years, we've gotten to recognize that we share far more in common than we have differences. But I met a guy there named Ethan, and we became very good friends. We've continued to be friends. And I was actually the co-best man with his brother for his wedding. Like, these are the kind of relationships that if we can view each other's gifts and talents through the lens of compassion, you have the potential to develop. And in even this limited Zoom dynamic, I'm sure many of you have already made group chats and have already started talking with your small groups. That's how we develop that. Riken viewed the congregation. It wouldn't have had sisters here, but it's been included in the updated XBSS fundamental principles. But he viewed it as a band of brothers and sisters who mutually help, encourage, and edify one another, and who support each other. For some reason, it didn't seem to make it onto the screen, the whole thing. Well, that's the point. In and through compassion, we can begin to recognize our shared gifts and talents and the places that we overlap. And in and through that, we become stronger and we help strengthen the legacy of the Xaverian brothers. I'm very blessed with my involvement in this retreat over the years to consider so many people, teachers and faculty from different schools, close friends of mine, including the cast of characters that are presenting today. We're genuinely friends, and that comes from, I think, recognizing that lens of compassion. And my hope is that that will work it's same way for many of you. So as you think about your time together on this retreat, think about what are your gifts and talents that add to this bigger mosaic, this bigger picture? What are you bringing back to your school, but also what are you bringing to this retreat as we continue to travel together over the next 3 weeks? Our time in small group is limited. And while most likely many of you are selected because you're quite comfortable in talking to other people, what of your gifts and talents are you going to share if you're typically someone who's quiet? Because with limited time, you need to make the small group opportunities last and make it valuable for you. So be that specific mosaic piece unapologetically, and bring all of that back and help the other people at your school recognize not only their giftedness, but also their connectedness to this Xaverian legacy. Now, normally in this retreat, we would then talk to you about how the retreat and our experience at our various schools have impacted us so much that we came back and were teachers. But that's not a big sell for most of you, because most of you aren't going to be teachers statistically. Some of you may, but it doesn't really sell what the purpose of this retreat is, which is not to sort of funnel us back to teach at our schools, but rather to recognize how Riken's legacy has impacted and influenced you, and how the environment at your school has influenced you. And so we've asked Mr. Nick D'Souza to come and just share his own personal story about how his time at Malden Catholic and his experience of the XBSS retreat has shaped his life's path as he's gone through college and also graduated. So Nick, it's all about you.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. So being the only non-teacher, in the words of Jay-Z, I would like to reintroduce myself. My name is Nick D'Souza, Malden Catholic class of 2014 and University of Massachusetts class of 2019. I first want to start off by congratulating the XBSS juniors present here today. You are the cream of the crop, and each of you are extremely special people whose communities entrusted you to represent them. To the senior leaders who are here and met me last year, nice to see you again. A little bit of different circumstances. And I thank you for your leadership and being a beacon of light for the juniors whose shoes you were in 1 year ago, around the same time. For all of you, this is just the beginning. I hope you take what you have learned here and bring it back not only to your school communities, but in all the communities that you're a part of going forward. This is what I want to talk to you about this afternoon, how I've taken what I've learned on the XBSS retreat as a junior and how I've carried it to my day-to-day life. I was blessed to have a really interesting and unique career path, and recently it's changed its trajectory due to COVID-19. So at the age of 18, during my first semester of college, I worked at the team store at the TD Garden, home of the Boston Bruins and Boston Celtics. I was pretty much folding t-shirts and working the register. It was only during basketball games and hockey games, so my summers were pretty open. I was scrolling through Twitter one day, and I saw a tweet from the Boston Red Sox with a job posting for the Fenway ambassador position. I decided to throw my hat in the ring, and I went through a pretty interesting hiring process that included being part of a parade, singing in front of people, and commuting in 8 feet of snow just to interview. I was one of 4 people selected and became the youngest member of the front office for that year at 18 years old. I also worked for the New England Patriots for 2 seasons as a VIP concierge, handling one of their biggest clients' guests during game days. Today, I want to focus on my time as a Fenway ambassador. As a Fenway ambassador, we handled all customer service responsibilities like answering phone calls, mail, and working information booths during the game, as well as executing our pregame and in-game ceremonies, such as number retirements, team reunions, and much, much more. We had a lot of responsibility, but there was only one non-negotiable every day. We were required to make at least one person's day every single day. I want to tell you 2 stories that happened in my time as a Fenway ambassador to help illustrate how we are servant leaders of God in our position, and we use our position to make a difference in people's lives. So during my first season, I was sitting in one of our information booths, and a lady comes up to me, and she told me how her friend was terminally ill, didn't really have much time left, but was a huge Dustin Pedroia fan, and how she wanted Dustin Pedroia to somehow reach out, either sign a baseball or make a video to pretty much encourage her friend. That's a lot harder to execute essentially through the rigorous course of the season. So I said, hey, honestly, I'm not sure if that's something we can do, but we can definitely do something to make sure the team reaches out to give our well wishes to your friend. She didn't really like my answer. She stormed off, pretty much said, if you listen to my story, it was warranted that she meets Dustin Pedroia. I was like, okay, well. So leaves, and then she comes back and says, okay, and I'll take your gift basket. So I was like, okay, well, we'll figure this out. So I ended up putting together a care package that included a blanket and a bunch of stuff from the team with a letter signed by our CEO, Sam Kennedy, and sent it to her house. And her friend opened it, and a few days later passed away. Fast forward 2 years, and pretty much I'm working a game, and my phone's blowing up and my radio's blowing up saying that there's a person looking for me. I wasn't expecting anybody for that game, that I was working with or anything like that. And essentially, it was the same lady 2 years ago, and she wanted to pull me to thank me for making her friend's last few days on Earth so memorable and to put a smile on her face, which that meant the world to me. The second story I want to tell you is about a family from Arizona who, pretty much like a younger family, so parents were in their early 30s, and they had 2 children. One was 8 years old and one was 4 years old. And the father of the family passed away at 33 of cancer. And when he got his diagnosis, he created a bucket list of activities that he wanted to do before he passed away. And essentially, one of the items on the bucket list was to meet David Ortiz. Unfortunately, he didn't survive long enough to try to make that happen. So his wife took it upon herself to continue the list of things that he wanted to do. So they come all the way up to Boston, get tickets to a random Red Sox game in April. Usually if you're from Boston or from the Boston area, it's super cold in April. Not many people go to Red Sox games in April just because of the weather. But it was a Red Sox-Yankees game on a Friday night, and we take him down to BP, and we pretty much told them, like, we can try to get David if he comes out for batting practice, but unfortunately, like, if he doesn't, we don't want to mess up his pregame funk, and we can't really grab him. So David doesn't come out, but I was responsible for picking the kids to say play ball before the game. So I brought that family back down to the field to say play ball, and they had a sign about their father passing away. And David Ortiz came over, signed the sign, took pictures with everybody, and pretty much they met David. But the amazing thing, and I kind of think about this as like an act of God. So they have seats way up in the grandstands away from the field. They come off the side door to get off the field, and they sit in 2 random seats right behind home plate. And about 2 days later, I was in a restaurant with my mother, and I look up on ESPN, there is the family that I had 2 days before at Fenway. So Alex Rodriguez, who played for the New York Yankees, came up to them and said, "Hey, I just saw your sign about your father. I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm going to hit a home run for you." Steps up, crushes a ball out of Fenway, rounds the bases, gives the kid the bat. For me, I kind of thought it was more of it wasn't a coincidence. They were not sitting in their seats. It was a Yankees game on a Friday. It was pretty busy. They were in pretty expensive seats, and that just kind of was a culmination of everything we kind of worked for. And it was really interesting to kind of see come into play. And I thought it was definitely more than just a coincidence. When I was here last year, I was recently hired back full-time at the TD Garden as an assistant manager of guest experience, which was a position I felt was made for me. It was a combination of what I did with the Red Sox and Patriots. Like many of my other like any others, my job was a victim of tough business decisions due to COVID-19. Working in sports was all that I dreamed of, and this was cut down prematurely. One of my goals at the Garden was to infuse the Zavarian brothers' charisms into creating a brand new culture for our department and the building. Even though I'm not at the Garden, I still think there's a very important lessons you can take with you to your classrooms, places of employment, or even on the sports field. First, the simplicity of a small act goes a long way. When getting an assignment, show humility because no one is above or below any task when called to action. Act compassionately towards others at all times. You never know what they are going through and in their life. And in the cases of going to a game, it's their opportunity to forget their struggles of everyday life, even if it's just for a few hours. Have zealousness for the tradition and storied history of your schools, family, and places of work. Finally, trust each other and each of the people that you work with and work together as a team for one common mission, creating lasting memories, one guest at a time. I thought working at the Garden was my calling, but God had other plans for me. When losing my job, I did some soul searching, and I was about to accept another job just doing regular part-time customer service for a startup company. I received a call from a good friend of mine who works for a nonprofit. They were looking to add a team member to their operations team, and he thought I would be a good candidate to help break the mold and bring some young energy through the door. Now I'm really passionate about taking the lessons that I've learned in my XBSS experience and working in sports and helping folks in low-income housing. This is what God needed me to do. Last year, when I was driving down to the XBSS retreat, I decided to wear my high school class ring for the first time in years. As I drove down the highway, I thought of all the people, the hard work that I powered through, and some of the great memories that I've had through my time in the XBSS network. This morning, I did the same thing to catch some of the motivation to deliver this talk to you today. In my first week working with the Red Sox, my really close friend Luis, who's like a Fenway big brother to me, said, if I ever get the opportunity to get a World Series ring, I should share it with others. When I look at this ring right here, I see a ring that's not only mine. I see a ring that's Mr. Driscoll's, Mrs. Driscoll's, and Dr. P's. It's my mother's, my brother's, and my sister's. It's my best friend, Micaiah, and the ring of so many other people that have passed my journey through life. God puts people in your path, in your life, for a reason. They form you and shape you and leave a lasting impression on you. My final challenge to you all is to be someone's World Series ring and make a lasting change on others and be a champion of your community. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. D'Souza. So to sort of sum everything up, first of all, thank you. That was a long presentation, so thank you for your focus. But secondly, this spiritual value of trust. Mary, we have a picture of Mary here, she famously said, let it be done according to your will, that she trusted in God. Well, you are entrusted by your schools to carry on this legacy. Just by attending this retreat, you've been entrusted to take something and bring it back to your schools and to help build up those communities, while also building community between the 13 schools. That's going to look different for each and every single one of you, just like Mr. D'Souza's path was not the path that he expected. But I believe that if we trust in God and we trust in one another and support one another and maintain the importance of those spiritual values in the Xaverian tradition and the Xaverian charism, that we will be led to the direction that we're being called to. I'm going to stop sharing this screen so Mr. Horgan can share the screen. And we're going to have our closing prayer, which will be from St. X. And then at the end, Mr. Horgan will give us some further announcements and instructions.
Let us quiet ourselves for prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Compassionate God, you have called us to follow you. As we journey through this Lenten season, keep us mindful that in harmony, small things grow. Give us the strength to patiently persevere in faith. Transform us so that we may bring your love to a world in need. And above all, bless us with your grace, that we might answer the call to build your kingdom. With hope fixed on the resurrection, we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
A reading from the fundamental principles of the Xaverian Brothers. Day by day, you will need to renew your response. Do not become discouraged over the difficulties you encounter in your life of gospel service. Knowing that difficulties would be your share, your founder judged that nothing special is achieved without much labor, effort, and zeal. Remember, Jesus, your brother, has walked this path before you. In you as risen Lord. He wants to walk this path again, and his Spirit, the Spirit of God, now guides you. Stand ready to answer when asked if you are available for God to become more present in your life and through you to the world.
A reading from the book of Psalms. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear though the earth give way, and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea. Though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake with their surging, God is with us, we will not fail. God will help us at the break of day. Come and see what the Lord has done, the desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. He says, "Be still and know that I am God."
All that is gold does not glitter. All who wander are not lost. Gold that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not touched by frost. From the ashes the fire shall be awoken. A light from these shadows shall spread. Those who bring peace shall not grow weary. Though the road be long, they will find rest. Often the silence speaks the loudest. The unclenched fist is still the best. From the ashes of fire shall be awoken. A light from these shadows shall spread. Those who seek truth shall not be sorry. Those who hope shall find new sight. Happy are those who show mercy. A candle shines the brightest light. From the ashes of fire shall be awoken. A light from these shadows shall spread. All that is gold does not glitter. All who wander are not lost. Behold, that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not touched by frost. All that is gold does not glitter. All who wander are not lost. Behold, that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not touched by frost.
We now bring our prayers of petition to God who hears us.
For those who experience hatred as a result of discrimination and oppression,
May we bring love.
For those who cause injury as a result of their own pain,
may we bring pardon.
For those who experience discord as a result of their beliefs or individuality,
may we bring union.
For those who experience doubt as a result of their disability or illness,
may we bring faith.
For those who experience despair as a result of poverty or lack of opportunity,
may we bring hope.
For those who experience sadness as a result of abuse or neglect,
may we bring joy.
For those who experience darkness as a result of loss or loneliness,
may we bring light.
Grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, it is in dying that we are born to eternal life.
We end this time of prayer in the same way we end every day at St. Xavier High School. Please stand. Let us pray. As we stand together, may we answer God's call to live a life of compassion, humility, simplicity, trust, and zeal. Amen. St. Francis Xavier, pray for us. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Well, thank you, St. X, for that beautiful prayer to wrap out our session. Thank you for our esteemed panel of Xaverian alumni, for all of our senior leaders who put together our various talks and prayers today. Thank you all. And for our junior retreatants, thank you for your attention. I know that it's a long day, 2 days in a row. We still have some more work to do. But we're going to be able to give you a little bit of a break here. Before we do that, though, I want to set some context. So this is a really wonderful experience for you to learn and to meet your peers from across the network, to learn more about what it means to be part of a Xaverian Brother-sponsored school. But we're also asking you to use your leadership and your unique gifts to give back to your school community or give back to your local communities. At the end of this retreat, you and your fellow school group are going to be asked to create a leadership project, an action plan, where you can raise awareness about the Xaverian charism, live out that call to be Catholic stewards, and give back in some capacity. This is something that we fully trust in you to do. And we have seen really incredible things in our network from student groups in the past. Feel fully confident that you're able to do this. So I know some of your small groups might have already had this conversation, but moving forward, we're asked that each of your school group conversations, that you spend some time thinking about what that project could be, learning from your mixed small groups about what's happening at other schools. Are there activities that you'd like to bring to your school? What's the unique need that you're experiencing that you don't see at other Xaverian schools? And how can you as a group begin to address that in a very small or in a very large way? And we'll have some more conversation of that as we go along, but wanted to put that on your plate. We're gonna have a 15-minute break, and then in 15 minutes, we'll break up into our small group sessions. In the meantime, I'm gonna ask all of the adult leaders if we can move up our meeting to now. I'll put us in a small group room together and we can connect then. And then I'll have, and then in 15 or so minutes, we'll open up school group breakout rooms and you'll be able to go there. Or if you're on campus with each other already, you can go off and just sign off from the Zoom. We have our next meeting is on Wednesday. The focus of that is going to be looking at issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, and what that means within our unique Xaverian framework in our Xaverian family. In preparation for that meeting, you do have a little bit of homework, and that is in your packet, and I'll be sending you an email as well. It's to continue to look at some of the different calls of our Xaverian mission and the Partners in Mission document that you've all been given. And I'll provide you some important context for our conversations on that day. So I'll be opening up rooms again in 15 minutes. So let's say right around 2:50 or so for that. If you could all hold on tight, adult leaders, I'll be moving us here shortly. Thank you all. And if I don't see you soon, I'll see you Wednesday.